Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing and paging through Mazes from Ninth Level Games. Is this new school OSR influenced role-playing game designed for 2020 to feel like it was created in 1979 so you can party like it's 1999? Or would you have a better time endlessly wandering through a labyrinth as opposed to diving into mazes? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I'm going to be reviewing Mazes in just a moment. But first, I do want to remind you, if you like this video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. Not only will it let you know when I upload videos such as this, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday through Thursday nights right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Without further ado, we are diving on into Mazes, which is from Ninth Level Games. It's written by Chris O'Neill with illustrations provided by A. Shipwright. I apologize, I don't know what the initial A stands for, so it's just A. Shipwright. This consists of 4 digest-sized booklets. It is available right now from Ninth Level, and it does carry an MSRP of $34.99. Let's swing on over to the other camera. So we're going to take a peek here. I've got Mazes right in front of us. As I mentioned, there are 4 booklets. This is not available in PDF. I do believe this is, I think, the only role-playing game from Ninth Level that is not available in PDF. They're also the makers of Kobolds Ate My Baby. I think that's probably the best known of their role-playing games, but as well as the Excellence. And Business Wizards is another one. Ninth Level has quite a few different games out there, and they actually have some card games as well, not just role-playing games. So we got the 4 books. The reason why I mentioned this is not available in PDF is because I am not going to show you every page of these books, because I don't want somebody out there to be pirating the screenshots from these booklets here. We will take a closer look at the first book, which is Sword, which has the core rules for mazes, and we'll get into the system itself. But we also have Sorcery, Maze, and Monster, and we will take a peek at all of these. So first off, let's dive on into Sword. This utilizes the Polymorph system. So the Polymorph system is a system of mechanics that is utilized by just about all of the Ninth Level role-playing games that are out there. And this is a bit of a tweak. So jumping on in, it's going to talk about what is a maze. So essentially, this game is designed as an old school Renaissance sort of game without being a retro clone or a fantasy heartbreaker or anything like that. This is very, very rules light. This is very minimalist, but there's a lot under the engine of this game. So if you're not familiar with the Polymorph system, essentially you have 4 dice. So you've got a D4, D6, D8, and a 10-sider. Depending on the type of character you play is going to determine what die you use. And you will always use the same die. I know, crazy, it's madness, right? So as an example, if you were looking to play say, a wizardly type, or maybe you're considering somebody who's very learned, who's extremely, let's say like a librarian, or somebody who's extremely kind of like enmeshed in knowledge. You'll probably end up with a character who has a D4. Maybe you want somebody who's a bit of a rogue, maybe a charismatic sort of scoundrel type. You're going to use a D6. Maybe you're looking for somebody who's kind of like maybe like a typical kind of fighter, or maybe a cleric. You're going to use a D8. And if you're looking to have a character that's kind of a jack of all trades, not really extremely well versed in anything in particular, but who happens to be a tank, can soak up damage, kind of be your defender of your group, then you're looking at a 10-sided die. That's it. That's all you basically need. Although, I got to be honest, each player should have 2 sets, because there is advantage and disadvantage where you'd be rolling 2. All right, let's jump on in here. Swords Against the Darkness. So I have to say that throughout all 4 of these digest-sized books, there is a real old school vibe that I don't see from other old school Renaissance sort of games. There's discussion of different, we get an Appendix N, which is not unusual, but you can tell Chris O'Neill really understands the flavor of sword and sorcery sort of books, because that's what this is designed as. This is a sword and sorcery sort of game. This is not necessarily designed for high fantasy. So we get a little bit of background talking about what is the world of mazes. Of course, you can easily use this system and port over some, original D&D, advanced D&D modules. It's super easy to convert just about any fantasy role-playing adventure to mazes. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well. So as I was talking about, we had the 4 different dice. So we've got 4 core roles. Now, these aren't classes. These are roles. So we've got the Paragon. That's the D4. We've got the Vanguard. That's the D6. The Fighter is the D8. And the Sentinel is the D10. Right here, it says you always only roll your die. So we have 4 different kind of categories of tests, of challenges that the players are going to roll against. We've got books, boots, blades, and bones. And funny enough, you'll have the same with their saves. So for an example, everybody's familiar with the terms of these saving throws. Same thing. You're going to utilize the same exact thing. So on a success of a 2 or 3 for books, boots is 3, 4, 5. Blades is 4, 5, 6, 7. Bones is 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So essentially, your character, let's say we're talking about the Sentinel here with the D10, they've got a chance to succeed on whatever they're rolling at. But for an example, let's say books, right? Maybe they're trying to overcome a books challenge. Well, they only have a 20% chance of doing so. Whereas the Paragon with the 4-sided die has a 50% chance. Plus, remember I said these are your roles, not your class. You can create a class that will give you a class bonus. So essentially what happens is with your class bonus, you're going to get a 1 is a success. So for an example here, books 2 and 3, let's say your character's a wizard and you're rolling a books test, a books challenge, and it has something to do with wizard. Maybe you're trying to read a magic scroll. Well, guess what? A 1 is going to be a success. So it's going to give you 75% chance of succeeding, whereas the Sentinel only would have that 20% chance. I really get a kick out of how this system works, and it's just simply very elegant how it all boils down. All right, so we've got the action, we've got the save, we've got the effect. So as an example, we've got the effect as well. So once again, you're always going to roll just your die. Let's say the Paragon's going to cast a spell, and of course, they'd be rolling against books. So they're going to roll their 4-sided die, and let's say they succeed. Now you're going to roll for, what's the effect? Once again, you're going to roll your same die. So this is for damage, what have you. If you get the highest number on your die, so for an example, if we got a 4 for our Paragon, let's say it's our wizard, right? It's an exploding die. It's what they consider to be crowns. So we get an exploding die. This only happens with your effect. So you get to roll your die again. And guess what? I just rolled another 4. So that would mean, hey, I get to roll it again. And I rolled another 4. So let's say maybe I was casting a spell that does damage. Well, now it's done 12 damage. So pretty interesting, once again, how that works as well. There is advantage and disadvantage. There is also the amount of light, because this is a sword and sorcery sort of role-playing game. So we have bright, we have torchlit, and we have dark. So it's just kind of the mood of what's going on in the game. So it's easier for the players to succeed on their rolls when it's light as opposed to torchlit or dark. So for an example, you would roll, if you get your class roll and it's light, then you get your success. So depending on the lightness of what's going on will determine success or failure on some of your die rolls, but not the core. Not the core of the game, the books, the boots, the blades, and the bones. We have hearts and stars. So hearts is essentially how much damage can you take? What's your constitution? As I mentioned before, the Sentinel is kind of a tank. They've got 10 hearts, but then they only have 1 star. And the stars can be spent to do something exceptional for your character. Or maybe, for an example, like the Paragon, our wizard example, maybe they want to cast a spell and they really want to make sure that it succeeds. They could spend a star. So I get a kick out of this too, where you've got your Paragon who's really kind of centralized as far as what they specialize in. Granted, they're kind of squishy, but then they get more stars. So there's a cool balance to how everything is. And I definitely do like that as well. So then we got a little bit about outcomes, talking about boots, books, blades, and bones. Class and crown, we kind of talked about that. Got edges. So edges is something that is utilized to kind of give your characters a bit of kind of fine-tuning or to personalize them as well. So as an example, we've got Jarak is a cruel swordsman who is well-armed. That's an edge. We've got Evie is a street goblin. She has the edge keen, which means she has great perception. We've got conditions as well. So we have different conditions. We can have stressed, tired, hurt, and down for the count. You could be knocking on death's door. Then we get into our roles and roles. And this goes into more detail about each of the roles. The Paragon, the Vanguard, the Fighter, and the Sentinel. As you can see, none of this is super crunchy rule-wise. Once you wrap your head around the concept of the roles and the edges and conditions, you're pretty much got everything right on top of your head. Talking about classes, this is where you can kind of create your own sorts of character classes. You're not restricted to fighter or cleric or paladin or assassin. Kind of make whatever you want up. So we got the edges as well. We've got a list of edges, talking about the different edges. Of course, you're more than welcome to create your own. We've got attributes, talking about combat, society, magic, advances. So these are all essentially edges there. Then we talk about treasure. It's kind of interesting. Mazes utilizes a system of treasure and darkness. So treasure is essentially a currency. So as opposed to your characters going and heading off to town and spending 45 minutes or an hour on a shopping spree, they'll decide how many points of treasure do they want to start the game with. Let's say maybe 3, as an example. So when they need something, let's say, and one of the examples given in the book is, let's say they need to climb a cliff. Well, they might spend a point of treasure and say, well, you know what, we've got our climbing gear and things like that, and they use the treasure that way. I find that kind of cool, but then on the flip side, the way the treasure is handled in mazes kind of goes against one of the aspects of fantasy role-playing games that just about everybody loves. And that's the cool, different sorts of magic items. So we get into armor, weapons, and attacks, talking about you kind of create a fiction for your main weapon, whatever it would be. And that's pretty much it for the book. Then we get into our character record sheet. I like that. Very cool. It shows everything you need to know right there on one little page. And even along the side here, it's telling us, okay, so a Paragon gets a D4, 4 hearts, 4 stars. Vanguard, D6. It's like 6 hearts, 3 stars. Got everything. You write your edges down. You've got everything that it takes for success on your rolls. It's got our conditions here as well. Stressed, tired, hurt. And of course, down. When you're down, you got to roll to see if you don't die. See how many rounds that you get to survive. Very, very cool. Very compact. Easy peasy to wrap your head around. All right, so that's Swords. We're going to take a quick page through real quick through Sorcery. Like I said, I don't want to share too much of this. So basically, the way the Sorcery is set up in mazes is kind of, you come up with like a school and kind of your specialty. So here we got, as an example, we've got the Mad Alchemist. So the Mad Alchemist always has potions. It's a magic item. As a mixer, I should say, of potions, are you lore-wise or nature-wise? Do others call you dexterous, keen, or learned? So with the magic aspect of mazes, it's more kind of creating your own archetype and taking it from there. So we'll jump through here real quick. So we get some different examples of some of the various different kind of types, right? The monster hunter. So then we get secrets of sorcery. So there is a bit of a rock, paper, scissors aspect to the various different elements. So we have sky, sea, forge, earth, night, and sky. So these are the schools of conjuration. Then it goes into detail about each of those. Then it talks about magic edges, fiction of magic as well, and spending stars on magic. So you notice there aren't a bunch of different spells included in here because it's essentially something that the players are going to create themselves with the MC. It is the maze controller in this game as opposed to like game master. Which I'm kind of surprised they used the term maze controller, because that is what the game master from Mazes and Monsters was called. And Mazes and Monsters is not well thought of with those of us who are around at that point in role-playing game history. All right, so Maze is essentially kind of your game master guide. Codex N, right off the bat, I'm going to show you Codex N, because something I thought was awesome, just taking a peek at it, is right off the bat, up top, number 1, Fritz Leiber's Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stories. Number 2 is Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champions novels. We've got the Earthsea novels and stories from Ursula Le Guin and Raymond E. Feist's Midkemia, I think it's pronounced, stories as well. Conan, one name you're not going to see here is J.R.R. Tolkien, because this is a sword and sorcery role-playing game. But not only does it talk about different books, I love how it mentioned, where was it? There we go. Robert Asprin's Thieves World novels. My gosh, I read those when those came out. The Shared World, Thieves World. They were awesome. So not only does it talk about different books, although, and it's funny, it says from the 20s to the 70s, but there are some books in here that are from the 80s. So I was a little surprised. But we also get some various different other games that are inspirational, like the Black Hack, of course, the original Dungeons and Dragons, Mouse Guard. I was surprised to see that as well. But we get some films, we get some animation as well. I thought that was very, very cool. And I had to laugh because there's so much of this that it's kind of like, wow, I'm on the same wavelength as Chris O'Neill on this. Because there's almost all of this stuff is stuff that I love. All right, anyway, so it's going to talk about how do you, create your adventures? How do you create your group? So, if you've got 4 players, you should try to strive to have each of those roles represented by each of the characters. Does it have to be that way? No. Another aspect of this game, and some may like it, some may not, is the concept that there is really no character advancement in mazes. I know that's going to be a shocker for a lot of people out there. This is designed more for episodic play. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. So there are a couple of kind of design decisions in mazes that I would not utilize at my game table. Now, that's just me. And I'll talk about that when I provide my, final thoughts and my review score. But I see where they're coming from. I see where Chris O'Neill is coming from, though, because if you have read, say, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stories, there's not much difference in the characters from when they first meet in Ilmet in Lankhmar all the way through the end of their stories as well, the Knight and Knave of Swords. So I see where that's coming from. Elric and Melna Bane. There's a bit of a change with him. He becomes a much more powerful sorcerer, but of course without Stormbringer, he's relatively useless. But he doesn't go from being some farm boy to a demigod, which is something that we see in most traditional fantasy role-playing games. So I do like that aspect, but I would like to see some character advancement. And there's some discussion how you can do something like that. It's just very hand-wavy. Essentially where it's like, okay, well, you can earn new edges. All right, so talking about darkness, remember I was talking about we've got bright, torchlit, bleak. So in bleak, we have a lot more disadvantage to the players. Bright is more the advantage to the players as well. And there's some discussion about how you would MC this. When's a good time for it to be bleak? When's it a good time to be torch lit? We got the treasure chest. Once again, I was talking about treasures basically a number. Talking about skint, flush, and encumbered. Hearts in danger. Hazards. And some notes on running a great game of mazes. And then another aspect of the game that some people really love, some people will be kind of scratching their heads, is that the whole premise of the game is we start playing when the action is about to begin. The adventure begins at the gates of the town. The adventure begins at the entrance to the dungeon. Not a lot of working your way up to that. Although we do have like a little hex map where it's talking about the world again, as if you'd be doing a little bit of a hex crawl. So, but the premise is that you're really looking to play the adventure like a movie would be, right? We're not going to spend a bunch of time leading up to all the excitement, hopefully, in an action-packed movie. And that is kind of how I look at things as well. Although I like to kind of set the scene. There was one other aspect, that I should mention about mazes is it's all player facing. Everything is player facing with mazes. The MC never rolls any dice. Ever. So one cool thing, we're going to talk a little bit about monsters, is the players have their stars. The MC has their darkness. So they get darkness points. And say, as an example, in a dungeon, in an old school module, the game master has usually an encounters table, a random encounters table that they would roll on. And it's like, oh, hey, the players run across a rust monster. There are no random encounter tables here. You can create some ideas of different creatures they may run across, but the MC actually spends a point of darkness to bring that out. I think it's kind of cool how we've got this kind of game master currency that can be used. So we get into different monsters, and if you're looking to, and I know this is something that a lot of people will be curious about, if you're looking to port over some of the classic monsters, classic creatures from any fantasy role-playing game, it's pretty easy. And it's discussed in this as well. I'm not going to go into the details about it, but suffice to say that, and this is with a lot of the various different new school OSR games, like for an example, we have Stealing from the OSR right here, is the main thing is what is the fascinating thing about this monster or creature that, that it can, what it does, as opposed to, I need to know that it's got this shaman, this orc shaman can cast this spell and that spell. And no, it's what is the purpose of that creature? What is the purpose of that character? That NPC. And it kind of boils it all down to that. Of course, the monsters, NPCs, creatures, they're all going to have hearts as well. If you've got like your big bad that the characters are tackling, and maybe somebody gets a lucky shot in, they get an exploding die, and they're going to take out the big bad like in the first round of combat, you can spend a darkness, refill their hearts. So I thought that's kind of cool as well. But I like the fact that everything is essentially player facing. It frees up a lot of hassle for the MC, at least in my opinion. And there are other games out there that are very famous for having all the die rolls being made by the players. Dungeon World's a great example. The games that are powered by the Apocalypse all have player facing. So then we get 3 adventures to wrap up. And they're actually very interesting. So just kind of give you a quick peek at these. They're only like a couple pages long. What's in the trash? What's in the trash? Or that trash. Talks about new hazards. And that's what we've got in Monster. So we've got Monster, Maze, Sorcery, and Sword. And these all make up mazes. So let's swing on over to the other camera. I'll provide my final thoughts and give this a review score. I gotta say, I really dig this. I can see why this was nominated for an Emmy Award last year for Best Rule System. And let's be very honest, and I'm not poking fun or anything like that, but there are any nominations where most people look at them and scratch their heads and wonder, really? Okay, so I've heard it's a cool concept, but is anybody actually playing that game? People should be playing mazes. I'll tell you that right now. So who is mazes for? It's for any game master out there who just wants to kind of cut to the heart of old school Renaissance sort of role-playing games. You can have a high fantasy setting if you want. You can have it more gritty and realistic. Do whatever you want. There is kind of a home world for mazes, but once again, it's completely up to you. It is your game. I really do like just about everything about this. I do have some quibbles, though. And I mentioned as we were looking through that I would discuss those. And there's two main ones. The first is the treasure. And I understand there's a section that talks about, okay, well, creating the fiction for your character's weapon, your main, and even like wizards and that, they can wield swords and whatever they want. There is no limitations as far as, oh, well, sorry, you're a cleric, so you can't have any sort of, sharp-edged weapon. No, there's nothing like that. So we do have creating the fiction for your main attack option. But one aspect, especially of old school Renaissance role-playing, is the weird and bizarre sorts of magic items the players can acquire. And for the most part, that's all kind of hand-waved away with the treasure. So if you've got 6 points of treasure, you can spend a point of treasure and maybe you have a magic weapon so you can attack that creature that can only be damaged by a magic weapon. Not a big fan. I can easily see how you would be able to include magical treasure. I mean, I don't mind the whole concept of just a treasure number, especially like I had mentioned in the example, climbing gear, having, 10-foot poles and ropes and spikes so you can spike those doors open or shut. Yeah, sure. Use the treasure die or treasure number and spend from that. The magical treasure, I think you could easily create different edges or really go OSR and have magic items that do weird things or cool things that aren't necessarily translated into bonuses or penalties or special abilities. For an example, like a magic jug that's always full of water. You could always pour water out of that magic jug. It never goes dry. That's kind of an OSR sort of treasure. Does it make you a better wizard or fighter? No, of course not. So I've looked to do something like that. So I think the game suffers a little bit in that respect because one of the aspects of old school Renaissance fantasy role-playing games is the cool and unusual treasure. And I'm not talking about +1 Warhammers either. Second item, and I did kind of mention this while we were looking at the books, the lack of advancement for the characters. I think that's a bit of an issue as well. And I completely get it. I completely get it that this game is designed for kind of, one shots or short campaigns, maybe a few sessions. And I get it. And the game works perfectly for that. But a lot of people out there, they want to take their characters from one level to the next, and they don't have to be levels, just to see some improvement or changes to their character as stories progress. Doesn't have to go on for years and years, but people do like to have a campaign and see changes happen to their player characters. Once again, this is something I honestly think can easily be tackled. And once again, it comes down to the edges. And there is some mention in the book about this, but simply award characters an additional edge every so many adventures, or maybe they do something like really phenomenal in an adventure, allow them to have a new edge, maybe tie it into what they did. I think that would work very nicely. Something else to keep in mind with this game is the player characters are supposed to be, if we look at it in, let's say, Dungeons and Dragons terms, they're supposed to be between about 4th and 6th level in mazes. So these are not, first level or 0 level, nobody's coming along. Of course, once again, first level means different things, different people. OSR first level is, well, yeah, they're still kind of cannon fodder, whereas modern Dungeons and Dragons, first level, they're pretty heroic already. Should throw in Pathfinder as well. First level's pretty powerful. So I would say I would like to see some additional content, somewhere down the line, talking about kind of more campaign play, which I believe might be on the horizon, because there are 5 digests just like this that were kickstarted. So, and they cover like the seasons. So there's 5 seasons in the world of mazes. So there are 5 digests that are supposed to come out like every 3 months. I got to be honest, I do not know if the first one has arrived or not, but they're going to contain more content for mazes. So my small quibbles aside, there is one last item that kind of dings this, and people maybe scratch their heads over me saying this. I wish there was a box. If you pay $34.99, you'll get the digest size booklets. If you want to spend $15, you can get a box to put them in. I would have liked to have seen a box, even if it was just a flimsy old thing. I don't know. But I will point out really nice quality as far as the production on these. These are going to hold up. It's not cheapo, thin paper. This is not like print on demand from some of these companies. Really nicely done. These will hold up to play. Plus, keep in mind, this system is super easy to wrap your head around and memorize rather quickly. So you're not going to be sitting here paging through these left and right constantly at the game table. All right. So let's give this a review score. And I'm telling you, this came so close to get a 9.5. Really, really close to a 9.5. And honestly, my little critiques about the treasure and real lack of character advancement, those are just my personal opinions. It does not take away from how well Mazes is going to play at your game table. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Mazes a very, very solid recommendation with a 9 out of 10. I think it's that good. These are fun books to read. These are very quick to get through too. It's about 200 pages of content. So you're getting a good amount of gameable material in here as well. I would really love to see what's going on with those upcoming digests, those zines, basically, because these are kind of designed as zine-sized books. I'd like to see what those 5 zines on the horizon will bring to the game as well. All right, that's it for this time out. Once again, if you like this video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell, because not only will it let you know when I upload videos such as this review, I'll also tell you when my live stream, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday through Thursday nights right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And as I wrap up all of my videos during this never-ending pandemic, I really do hope all of you out there are being smart and staying safe. Oh, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, if you'd like to subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel, by all means, click right here. And if you'd like to check out one of our recent live streams, click right up top. And if you want to roll the dice and see what the algorithm for YouTube recommends, click right here. And of course, thank you once again for watching. And gang, please stay safe and wear a mask.